Let's hear now from the former UKIP MEP Jonathan Arnott, who campaigned for the Leave side during the EU referendum. I wanted to find out from him why he has so many problems with this deal, which has been put together by Theresa May.
I have a lot of concerns about this deal. The obvious one to start with is Article 132 of the deal, which says that the transition period can be extended beyond the 31st of December 2020. But crucially, there's no limit to that. So it could be that we're effectively tied into further EU regulations, further EU directives for many, many years to come, and in a situation where we would have no say whatsoever in those regulations or directives. Now, I'm the first to say that the current system is not very democratic. It doesn't give us very much of a say in laws that are affecting our country, but there's a big difference between not having very much of a say, not having enough of a say, and having what would in effect be no say. So the idea of this continuing for many, many years to come is a worrying one, and it's one which could leave the UK hugely exposed, particularly if the European Union goes down certain routes in tax harmonisation that it is already pushing at the moment. I'm very much concerned that this deal ties the UK's hands in all kinds of other ways. I'm concerned that actually in some ways there's a power grab by European Union countries. So the UK is agreeing to things which we haven't even agreed to already. So, for example, in terms of tax sovereignty in Gibraltar, why would we be giving the EU greater say than it has at the moment? Surely people voted leave because they wanted to take back control, not because they wanted to hand further control over to the European Union. And it also binds our hands in terms of a number of policies where we would simply not be able to set the laws that we want to set, or to make decisions that we want to make. Certainly in terms of agriculture and fisheries, there are worries. In terms of policies, in terms of how we support our businesses. Actually, there's a lot in that withdrawal agreement that makes it very, very difficult. Finally, and I know this is a complicated issue, but finally, the big question about the withdrawal agreement as well is what's missing from it. There are so many areas where it simply doesn't say what the idea for the relationship post the transition period actually is. So it's kicking a lot of things into the long grass at the same time. So we know that there are a lot of things being given away. We know that there's not really very much that we actually get. But worse than that, the questions for the long-term future are then kicked beyond the 31st of December 2020. And so it's such a blank check that we're being asked to write. I just can't possibly imagine how Theresa May can think this is a good deal for Britain.
Jonathan, on the one hand, you have Theresa May saying this deal's in the national interest, and on the other hand, you have Brexiteers who are saying this isn't the Brexit that people voted for. What do you think happens now?
Well, I mean, if you ask people the reasons that they voted Brexit, I think that when you compare them to this draft withdrawal agreement, they just simply are not the same thing. We just don't get back the control of our trade policies. We don't get back real sovereignty of our own courts, of our own laws, and so on. So I think it is perfectly fair to say that. What happens now? Well, I struggle to see how Theresa May can survive without one of two things happening. Either we'll end up with a situation where 48 MPs will submit letters to Graham Brady demanding a vote of no confidence in Theresa May. Indeed, by the time this programme goes on air, that may already have happened. Or Parliament will have a vote on the deal, and there's no way that Theresa May can get this deal through Parliament. So the one thing that she has done is that she's united Brexiteers and Remainers in opposition to this deal. So the opposition are going to vote against this, but a lot of the backbenchers in her own government are going to vote against this. So one way or the other, either Parliament's going to vote this deal down, or Theresa May has to face a motion of no confidence. And both of those are very difficult for Theresa May on a personal level. Her only chance, I think, is if she wins a motion of no confidence. That then gives her immunity under the Conservative Party rules for a year from further challenge. And if she can then somehow manage to win a vote in Parliament on the back of that, saying, well, I won the vote, so you're going to now have to back me. It's a slim chance, but I think it's the only chance that she's got of getting this through. Personally, I hope that she doesn't manage to get this through, because I think if she does get this through, that everything that we've fought, worked, campaigned for many, many years will turn out to be little more than window dressing.
Just as a final question for you, for months and months and months, Theresa May has said, no deal is better than a bad deal. Has she broken that promise?
Well, I agree with Theresa May. They're words that I very rarely use, but I completely agree that no deal is better than a bad deal. And I think this deal proves it. It proves exactly why, because what you end up with is, in some ways, the worst of both worlds. You end up with European Union having control over the UK in a lot of ways. You end up with the UK still paying huge amounts of money to the European Union, but without the UK really being able to do the things that we should be able to do as a result of Brexit. So I think this is the very definition of a bad deal. If Theresa May thinks this isn't a bad deal, I'd love to see what, in her view, a bad deal would actually look like. What more could we possibly have reasonably given away than Theresa May has given? To put this another way, take that withdrawal agreement. Imagine that had been the European Union's opening salvo in negotiations, and we'd seen this 2 years ago. What would we have said at the time? We would have said that this would be completely unacceptable, and we'd have thought that they were having a laugh. We would have thought that this would be completely unacceptable and not even a reasonable basis for opening discussions, opening negotiations. And I think Theresa May's Mansion House speech would say exactly the same. She said at the time, she set out what a good deal would look like. Well, if you compare this agreement to what she set out, they are absolutely poles apart. So I think just simply based on Theresa May's own words, this has to be a bad deal. And according to Theresa May, no deal would be better. And I do believe that no deal would be better than this. I want a deal. I want a decent, fair, free trade deal which allows the UK to look to the wider world, not to the European Union. I want a deal, but I would rather have no deal than have this.
That was the independent MEP Jonathan Arnott speaking to me this week.